Hello and welcome to the IRS Rail webinar session on good decision making for railways in tough times, produced by the International Railway Summit in association with Trenolab. I'm Joel Somura, the Managing Director of IRIS Events, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session. So at the last count, we had over 120 people from 37 countries registered for today. Welcome to those of you attending our webinar for the first time, and welcome back if you've joined us before. 2020 has been an extraordinary year for all of us. Among the many characteristics of this year we can think of, one interesting one is that this year has been a year of decision making. Companies have had to make many big decisions that would normally have taken many years. Abolishing office work and business trips in favor of Zoom meetings is a familiar example. Some businesses have had to make even more difficult decisions like redundancy. Railways are, of course, no exception. Rail operators rely on many years of past data to predict the demand and plan their services, timetables, staff shifts, fleet rotations, maintenance schedules, ticket pricing, and so on. We've faced many situations this year where we had to make difficult and radical decisions quickly to ensure both public safety and business continuity. How can we make these difficult questions and get them right? I'm delighted to have the support of rail sector leaders and innovators to tackle this question as speakers with us today. In particular, we are fortunate to have the support of Trenolab, which allows us to provide this important debate for anyone to watch for free. Trenolab is an expert in railway operations simulation and data analysis. Their suite of software tools is designed to help railways quickly and effectively solve complex operational problems. Technical Director Giorgio Medeosi will be talking us through Trenolab's answers to how we best navigate the uncharted waters that we find ourselves in. Network Rail's Intelligent Infrastructure Director Jacqueline Young was due to speak today, but unfortunately she's unwell, and in her place we have Alex Schock joining us today. Thank you, Alex, for standing in at short notice. We're equally grateful to Czech Railways Jan Illich and PwC's Paolo Guglielminetti for sharing their expertise with us today. If you want to know how we can support our future webinars and participate in the debate, do get in touch with us. We're tweeting live during this webinar. Follow us at Rail Summit, and please use our hashtag you can see on the screen, IRS Rail Webinars. If you enjoy the session, do continue the debate on Twitter and LinkedIn. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our guide for today, Paolo Guglielminetti. Some of you may remember Paolo from the webinar on digital nudge for social distancing we had in October. He was one of the best moderators we have worked with, and I think it certainly is a good decision on our part to welcome him back today. Paolo has over 20 years of experience in transport planning, economics, and operation. And his current projects involve rail digitalization in the two key areas of enhancing rail network operation and improving customer experience. I'm delighted to welcome you back, Paolo, for today's debate on good decision-making for railways in tough times. Paolo, over to you. I think, Paolo, I don't know, we cannot see or hear you. Maybe you can switch on your camera if you can hear me. So while we wait for Paolo to rejoin, I suggest I'll give a quick housekeeping notice about how the audience members can ask questions. So there are two ways of asking questions. One is verbally. You can raise hand and we can turn on your mic to ask questions directly. To do that, you can go to the bottom of the chat screen. There is a very small, it's very difficult to see, but at the bottom of the chat screen, there's a hand icon. You can click on it and then we'll contact you to switch on your cameras at the right time. The other way of asking questions is in the Q&A section. You can type the questions directly, and audience members can vote which questions should be asked as well, and Paolo will pick up those questions. Paolo, I can see you're there. The screen, your camera is black, but you may be able to talk. Can you speak? Unfortunately, I cannot hear Paolo. Yes, let's see if it works. While Paolo comes back, we have a oh, I think maybe it's working. Paolo, can you hear? Can you speak? While we wait for Paolo, we have an audience poll that Paolo has prepared. So maybe let's move on to the poll, and give him a minute to come back. Yes. So the audience members can vote. If you can respond to this question: how has your company's decision-making changed during the COVID-19 pandemic? Has it worsened overall? So, for example, you've been unable to rely on past experience, and there's been time pressure and external constraints for various reasons. It's worsened overall. Oh, so the proposals gone. Yeah, I think. Or has it improved overall because of the people have been more sensitive to data, and then maybe digitalization has been accelerated because of the necessity. So the decision making has improved overall, or unchanged. So there's some improvement, some and some deterioration, and overall on average it's unchanged. So if audience members can vote and choose which one you think about your company, and while you vote, oh, Paolo is back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. Let's just wait a second for the voting.
Yes, about a third of you have voted. If you can, we'll close the vote in the next 10 seconds or so. But if Paolo, if you want to.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I'm very unlucky. Every time we start, I have a technical problem. So, but it will go smoothly afterwards. So, thank you, Jules. Thank you, International Railway Summit, and all the speakers to be here today. As was introduced, is a very important topic. I think most of you are railway sector stakeholder, and you are exactly addressing those issues we will discuss today in your day-to-day work life. So we will have a number of interesting presentation. I think Jules already explained about the housekeeping. We will work. We very much welcome your your questions, your remarks. I will make now a short introduction, and then let's say starting also from what I'm seeing from poll results.
Yes,
it's interesting to see that the public is divided half and half, more or less.
So if you if you haven't voted yet, if you can vote in the next 3 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. So the last chance to vote. Okay, so if we can close the poll, please, and you can see the result of the polls in the closed. So if the audience members can go to poll section and the closed, you will see the results. 56% unchanged overall, followed by improved. Yeah.
So there are a significant number of you that basically have been able to go through this pandemic without major changes in the decision making. This means the railway are resilient, or are too much resilient, maybe even in particular condition. There is 28%, they say, improved. We know that there is a higher understanding of all the sector, that we need more flexibility, better use of capacity through using in a greater extent data and digitalization. And just 5%, just 60%, so 5 answers, they say it worsened overall. And I think would be very interesting to have more details about those cases in the remarks and question afterwards. So I will now start my short introductory presentation. Effective decision making, so the topic we are discussing today, was already crucial before the COVID. You know that railways, especially in some region, in some countries, are operating on relatively old legacy infrastructure with more and more densely used network. So that means that there is a need of let's say upgrading the system, the infrastructure, to address potential congestion in nodes. Especially a number of equipment needs to be modernized. In Europe we have this big transition to ERTMS, and there is some investment backlogs to be recovered. And the overall result of it on the customer side, that it was very difficult to improve punctuality, even in the country that address this very, let's say, seriously. According to European Railway Market Observatory of the European Commission, there was no major improvement in punctuality, and 2 passengers out of 5 are dissatisfied about the railway punctualities. In most cases, such delays are related to the system itself, so railway operators or infrastructure manager, and not to third parties, even if these delays generated by third party exist. So the ability to make good decision making, especially in the utilization of the network, was already on the table before the COVID. Now we are facing what we call the next normal, which is a situation where we don't have, apart from some countries, strict lockdowns everywhere. We are trying to restart the economic and social educational activities with ups and downs, we know, depending on the situation of the pandemic. There is a general need to ensure the physical distancing constraints will be respected. We are progressively better in mapping the virus diffusion, including understanding how much public transport is railways are a potential area of risk, but still the general public, I would say, see this as a problematic area. So that's we need to distance, protect, and communicate effectively to people. Technology can support on that, also can support on adapting the service level due to the lower demand, but also to the need to ensure the capacity is there for the social distancing. But we have to already address or have a vision for the new normal when the vaccination or therapy will be available. There will be the end of the physical distancing need, and the travelers probably will gradually get back on public transport, because they have no fear anymore of collective travel. But this should be prepared. A better railway system should be prepared for that situation, especially to have an efficient use of the capacity, to improve the resilience of the system for future events that can always happen, maybe not so disruptive as the pandemic, but can always happen, and rebuild the trust of the passenger in the system. So that means that we have several elements to be considered to improve the decision making, especially if we target this future new normal. Digital solutions are certainly very, very important for that. So we need to have a look on the technology and what technology can bring to optimize the use of available capacity. But we also need to leverage on extended data availability. Normally, operators and infrastructure managers gather a lot of data thanks to Internet of Things sensor, let's say the increased capability of the new assets they are building to also generate information about the status. This should be really used. It should be feeding the simulation optimization tool you probably have, that not rely just on historic data, but will leverage on the extended data that are availability that we have now. It's important to effectively deliver the result of technological tools like the one used for simulation optimization. What I mean is that they should be, let's say, actually delivered to all the organization, and if necessary external stakeholder. They are not only an internal, let's say, system that should be used by the operator for optimizing their own capacity of decision, but they should be made transparent. If you are doing a new timetables and you made new decision and you are making changes because you have simulated that this will be the best solution, this should be transparently disseminated, because it's a system highly regulated with a lot of attention. The public opinion and decision making should be transparently tracked by external actors as well. It's important also to break silos of the organization, digitalization, and the use of new tools should not be an element only for the people working on such areas of the company. Everybody should. I always say that I remember a financial director of a big railway company stating that we are buying a lot of the optimization tools, but I see no reduction on cost in the area where we are using them. Why is that? If they are optimizing, we should have an efficiency. So it is important to spread out the understanding about such tools in the organization. It's important to upskill the staff, all the staff, in order to not use such digital solution just as a small team within a much larger organization. Everybody should understand and appreciate the value that the technology can bring. And of course, we have to learn from the crisis. We have to take into account what has happened. There are major lessons learned from that. So just to elaborate a couple of minutes, but I'm going to the conclusion on that. The COVID has shown that we have a change in mobility behaviors we have to address. I will not repeat too much what I've already said, but there is the problem of physical distancing, the problem of lack of trust of the passenger in crowded places like public transport, and the need of showing that is under control. At the same time, we have positive effect. Everybody now can use digital solution. There is an accelerated digitalization of the population. There is a major need to effectively manage the system resources, because the reduction of economic resources, and we have to prepare the system for the future. So we have a number of things we can do. So a smarter management of passenger flows, smarter management of the capacity, more tailored approach to the customer, providing to specific solution for them. So digital solutions are needed for the new normal, but if they are available, we have also to consider that most operators face challenging in deploying them extensively and effectively. So despite the clear urgency, even the most basic things like having a proper information about how many passengers are on each train, in some cases is done manually, in some cases only partially done automatically. So there is still let's say the capabilities and the availability of solutions is one thing. The implementation is not so effective yet, and this is because there is in some cases lack of knowledge on up-to-date technical solution. I welcome the webinar today. Will be an opportunity to discuss about that. Sometimes the technology is not developed on a clear business-driven strategy, so is not addressing exactly the topic that the operator are facing, and this is another topic of discussion we will have. and the results are not always shared across the organization and beyond. So even if the railway operator has done a lot of things to optimize the system, to keep it under control, this has not been disseminated well. Finally, topics for discussion. So we will discuss what are some technological solutions that are available to address some operational and commercial challenges. From supplier side, from operator side, we will see what is moving in the sector. What are the conditions under which such technologies will really generate the expected result? The expected result are improvement in performance in key area, not just on the computer, but in reality. So how to implement the result of such tools in the real world in terms of better flexibility, punctuality, capacity, cost efficiency, and so on and so forth. What are the external factors that are enablers or obstacles to the railway operator in decision making, like public sector contract constraints, inflexible regulatory prescriptions? So all the things that are reducing the autonomy of railway operator in making the best decision, and what are the specific lessons we can leverage on after your experience, railway operator experience during the COVID-19. So this was basically my introduction. I think we will before going to the second poll, I will already introduce the second speaker. The second speaker will be Jan Illik. No, sorry, it will be Alex Schock. Alex, thank you for joining us. Jacqueline was expected at the last moment. We had to do this change. Alex is, in any case, well fitted for the discussion today because he's head of delivery for intelligent infrastructure in network rail. So it's very important digitalization program to establish network rail, data-driven rail infrastructure manager. So Alex, I think you will have interesting things to share with us.
I hope so.
And we have, I think we have a poll, Jules, or not yet?
If you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay. So if you can put the poll up, please. Yes. So the second poll is, what is the biggest challenge to overcome to deliver data-driven intelligent infrastructure program for the railway? So is it resistance to change, lack of investment in new technology, or use of legacy systems, or is it lack of digital skills? You may think it's all of the above, but if you can choose the biggest challenge out of these four, please, audience members. If you can vote in the next 15 seconds or so, we'll close the voting shortly. So about, I think half of you have voted so far. If you can select the biggest challenge out of these four to overcome to deliver data-driven intelligent infrastructure program. If you can make your final choices in the next 5 seconds, and then we'll close the poll, and we'll ask Alex for his comment.
Interesting result. Huh?
Yes. So we'll okay. So we'll be closing the poll now. Yes. Let's close the poll, please. So you can see the result in the closed section there. Yes, sort of two-way split. Paolo and Alex.
Yes, I think Alex will comment. I will use these elements also for the Q&A. That is very interesting.
Really interesting, Paolo. Can you hear me, Paolo? Yes.
Yes,
we can hear you.
Unexpected for me, actually, that one. I actually thought that you know, from working in a large digital transformation program, for me the hardest thing is around the resistance to change. You know, all of the other three are very valid, and we have those in network rail and those challenges, which, you know, I think I'll come to that in the presentation. But actually, I was expecting resistance to change to be higher, and it's one of the lowest, which is really interesting. So maybe we can discuss that later on in the.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for having me, everybody. Jacqueline does send her apologies. There was no point in her coming because nobody wants to hear her snivelling with a cold on the screen and listening to it on the computer. So I'm the head of delivery on Network Rail's largest asset management transformation program. It's a digital transformation program. It's the second one we've had actually. So we had a previous transformation program called Orbis, offering rail better information services. That was in the last control period, so between 2014 to 2019. And this next one takes our digital transformation in asset management onto the next level. And the program is titled Intelligent Infrastructure. So we have a lot of data in Network Rail, and it's how to use it wisely and how to create insight from that. So how best make use of that to inform decision making, which is what it's all about today. So, I'll just come on to this first slide here, which, as I've said, it's about taking data and turning it into intelligent information so people can work smarter. And we have our staff. Safety is of paramount importance, as everybody knows in the railway industry. And ultimately, though, it's about delivering improved performance, improved services for passengers and freight customers, and they're our end customers ultimately, and that's why we're here doing what we're doing, is to serve those customers. There's 5 kind of key themes here and reasons for why we're running the program. So we've touched upon the passenger focus and developing our predictive capabilities in the field of asset management, particularly in maintenance, and I'll come on to that shortly, to reduce the impact of failures on the network. So we have quite a number of failures across all our asset types, which have been reducing over the years, but we still have reliability issues. And one of the key aims of our program is to reduce service affecting failures on the network. The other big driver is safety, and that's both for passengers, but also for our staff that are working on the network. So can we have less unplanned work? Can we put less people out on track? And that's those are the two main aims around safety of our program. From a timely perspective, we're driving towards much more of a predict and prevent culture. So can we predict our failures, as we said before earlier? Can we get people on site and on track, fixing defects before they actually turn into a failure? Can we work smarter? Can we get better at planning our work in? Can we improve our schedules? And can data be accessed from anywhere on the network and through different mediums? So can we provide our frontline users with handheld technology, with access to the latest information? And can we give them insight on the track? Can we give our engineers insight before our maintenance staff even need to go out on site? And that's what our program is all about. There's 5 sort of building blocks to our intelligent railway, particularly in our sort of asset management space. But a lot of this sort of lends itself to operations side, which Paolo was talking about before, and I can touch on perhaps in the Q&A as well, some of our work in that space. So it starts out with our engineering assessments, which in Network Rail we've been excellent at for many years. We've been reliant on our on our solid engineers within the organisation. But over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, we've really started to introduce and make best use of the emerging technologies now that exist. So Paolo talked about Internet of Things. So we're really exploiting that at the moment. We have a range of monitoring devices out on the network as well, and we're trying to expand that portfolio all of the time. Our program has a significant tranche of work on analytics. So there's a huge work developing analytics, so we're using the Microsoft Azure platform to do that. We've got 3 projects around planning. We've got like time recording projects. We've got asset lifecycle planning and work scheduling projects. And then we also look at how we execute work on the track. And that's a continual feedback loop between those building blocks. And what underpins all of that is a huge people and cultural transformation program. And I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. So what does a data-driven railway mean for us at Network Rail and probably a number of other railways across the world, I'm sure? So firstly, provides an intelligent view. So we are aiming to have a much better and much more informed view for our customers and for our infrastructure managers across the whole network, and that's not just in pockets. So what we want to do is look across the network, be able to share insights, be able to look at performance in different areas of the country and learn from that. So we're looking at that view in a holistic view and not just localized view. We're looking at making sure our data is consistent and stored in one place. And importantly, it's about smarter working, so increasing the accuracy of the predictions on asset degradation. So we've got lots of data, as I said. It's about bringing that data into one place. It's about analyzing it. It's about using smart analytics and looking at and utilizing newer skills that we've been bringing into the industry. So data scientists looking at exploiting our data and trying to come up with trends and patterns, developing algorithms so that we can best predict when failures are likely to occur, not just kind of a day or so before, but 30, 60, 90 days before. And so we can prioritize and plan ahead effectively. And what does the future look like for us? Well, I've already touched on predicting asset failures, but it's about being at the forefront of engineering technology as well. It's about exploiting emerging technologies, about utilizing all of the opportunities that are out there for us. And I think some of that Paolo touched on in his introduction as well. And it's about upskilling our teams. So what we're finding at the moment is, it was interesting in the poll that the lack of skills was one of the lowest one. And yes, probably that's about right, I would say, but nonetheless, it's an incredibly important part of what we're trying to do here. So we have a lot of people in the industry that are used to working in one way. They're used to going out on site and maintaining in one way and not necessarily using technology in the most effective way to support them. And our program is doing that. So we're having to take people on a journey. We're having to upskill people in the use of technology, but we're also having to upskill the supply chain as well, interestingly. So we've got some supply chain partners that we work with. We have a quite small team in Network Rel on this program as a client-side team. We're really utilizing and exploiting the partnerships that we've developed with supply chain partners and systems integrators, business change integrators, and lots of specialists in their fields. Probably the least interesting slide we've got. This is how we're set up as a program, but it just gives you a flavor for it. So we set ourselves up with a series of different work streams that are largely centered. If you look at the blue boxes there, they're centered around our kind of asset disciplines, which most of you will be familiar with in Network Rail. This is largely how we're actually sort of functionally split within the organization. So we have separate track teams, we have separate signaling teams and EMP teams, both from an engineering perspective, but also in the way that we split our maintenance and asset management. And how we do that, we tend to do it within discipline, but there are teams that are looking at cross discipline, and part of our program is trying to look at cross discipline as well, and provide a sort of a more of an asset criticality approach to the way we manage to do risk-based maintenance. So that's how we're split. We have two enabling functions, two main enabling functions there. So we have something around analytics on the right-hand side there. So I've talked about that. So we're exploiting the Microsoft Azure platform and all that has to offer, and developing analytics. And we have a big data science practice that we use. And then there's an Ellipse Foundations. Ellipse is our enterprise asset management system of choice, and that's what we've been using in Network Rail for many years now, probably 15 to 20 years, I think it's been there. And that system, we haven't really exploited that asset management system over the years, and there's a whole range of new modules and features and functionality that provides us with. So we're looking to exploit that over the next 3 to 4 years at the back end of the transformation program. There's some critical enablers that are really important for us as a program to focus on. So there's industrial relations. I'm running short of time, so I won't go into too much detail. Feel free to ask me some questions on this. But industrial relations is a huge part of what we do within the program. So there's a big trade union culture within the UK, and we have to do a lot of work with our trade union partners out there. There's business change is a really big part of the program, as talked about. You can introduce all of the technology you want, but if you don't take people on a journey and you don't win people's hearts and minds and work with them to adopt that technology, it's not going to be successful. We're utilizing Azure, as I talked about. We're spearheading agile technology delivery as a way of delivering. as an approach rather than more traditional waterfall, and that's something that we're not used to in Network Rail. So we're learning as a team on that all of the time, and we focus a lot of time on diversity and inclusiveness, not only within the workforce but within our transformation program itself. So making sure that we get the best of all of the sort of expertise and skills out there in a range of different cultures and different ways of thinking and different ways of working. I think very, very quickly on this. This is our development process. It's pretty traditional, so I won't dwell on that. Design, build, test, iterate, and deliver, and very much lends itself to the agile way of thinking. And then just a couple of slides at the end. I'm conscious of time, but this is just a picture of our enhanced decision support tool. So we're building a range of a whole heap of modules and creating one big enhanced decision support tool to provide all our frontline users and engineers with ability to make better decisions. So, and I've got an example of that which I'll just show. So this is our alignment of track geometry chases. The top one there is what we used to use, which was multiple trains providing data, and trying to align that was really, really difficult. The middle one is with the help of our data scientists and Cognizant, our tech delivery partners, and our internal R&D team, we've managed to provide an alignment, and that gives us the ability at the bottom there to start looking at where we can see failures on track. And if you see the dotted line, we're able to predict when we're going to hit the yellow line and the red line, which are our immediate action levels and alert limit levels. So that's the type of capability we're providing, and so far we're 2 years into a year and a half into our program, and we've won a number of prestigious awards within the railway sector, and we're very proud of that. So I think, Paolo, that's a very quick whistle stop tour through, and happy to answer some questions later.
Thanks. Yes, there are a couple of questions. One already coming from the public, and one I have in mind that will allow you to extend a bit. I know the time is short, but there are a number of interesting things that have been shared by you. I think there would be several other questions coming. So just a couple of additional housekeeping elements. So you have the Q&A section. You can use some participants already have used to share question that I will then put to the speakers after the second presentation. And you can download the handouts. So if you go to the handouts section, you can get all the presentation we are doing today. So that's very, very effective, I think, also to bring memories and elements after the webinar. So now we have the second presentation from an operator that will be Jan Ilic. Jan is European Affairs Representative and Deputy Director Long Distance in Czech Railways. Is working in the company since 2018, and now, as I say, is in the long distance department. Is also representing České dráhy in Brussels from September. So he will also have a European, let's say, view on this topic. And before joining the railways, he's working at the Czech Ministry of Transport. So Jan, the floor is yours. We have first another poll, Jules, before start. First Jan and then the poll. Okay.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Hello, everybody. Hello from the foggy, really autumn Prague. But let's say you will be not affected by this ugly weather. Let me start from the different view, because Alex mentioned how the infrastructure manager is doing and is trying to use data and for better performance in this difficult time. And I will provide you the perspective from the railway operator, the state-owned railway operator, who actually provides the services on the whole territory of our country, and of course internationally. I mean, to explain my position or my company's position. So I should definitely describe where we are and what we have experienced in the recent months or in this year. This is the number of active cases the infections of COVID-19. So we can see the comparison, the springtime, the spring lockdown, and the autumn one. And you can see the really significant imbalance between the spring and the autumn. What is also important that our government make some decisions reflecting on this development. And you can see the list of this, I don't know how, maybe 8, 7, 6 on the left side, set measures, what our government has done. And you can also see what is also the information given from this slide, that of course the measures in the spring and in the autumn are slightly different. Of course, the state of emergency covered both the spring situation and the autumn. But for example, and also let's say the close of the schools would significantly affect the flows of passengers, the pupils and students using the commuter service every day. But what we can see, there are significant differences. For example, the closure of the borders. This is something what we faced during the spring period, during this first wave. But now the difference is the border are still open, so we can operate the trains across the borders. This is quite important because the decision the government did. Let's say in earlier this year, it means in spring, in March, was very quick, and we were really not ready. I mean, to react to react on such a flash situation that, well, the borders are closed and we cannot operate the trains. This was the brand new fact, and we somehow used to react on this new situation. Well, there are several, let's say, scopes of our activities. We definitely changed the timetables. We, of course, it was a must to negotiate every step, every change in our approach with the task force, with our ministry, with the police, and with some, let's say, epidemiological team. We completely redesigned the scheme for ticketing and the control of tickets, and of course it affects the customers and of course our staff, onboard and station staff. Here are some measures in a more concrete, let's say, expression. So it's obvious what we have done, and it was really very quick, albeit it was an insufficient amount of face masks at the beginning of the whole crisis. Let's say 4 points. This is something on the left side. This is something what probably every railway company has experienced. What probably was unique in our case, we completely omit the seat reservation system. So we because in the Czech Republic, the system of railways is completely open. Therefore, we have only few services with the obligatory seat reservation. So we suspended the complete seat reservation system. The reason is to allow the social distancing. This was a very quick decision, and what might be interesting for you, it was in the opposition to the suggestion we got from the Commission, from the European Commission, to use the seat reservation systems as a tool how to keep this social distancing. But in our case, it could happen that you simply buy the reservation, you choose your place online, but because of the open system, it simply it could happen that next to you, very close next to you, there will be somebody else sitting. So therefore, we decided to cancel the reservation system. It was a very quick decision, and let's say let the responsibility on the passengers is on to choose the place where it's enough empty spaces. This was something very special. What we also get the approval from the government. We completely, for 1 month, we stopped the selling of ticket at a cashier at the stations or on board. The only one way how to buy the ticket was online, because we want to simply limit or reduce the possibility of the physical contact between our staff and the passengers. What I also mentioned, the timetable. During the spring, we completely stopped the international trains, and of course, what was also quite unique, we omit some stations which were written in the timetable, but because of the very high degree of this COVID-19 infection, so we simply talked to government that it's not allowed to stop here, and we arrange our stopping policy in the timetables. Of course, it was only for a certain period, but it was one of the tools, very quick done, how to react on the not very pleasant situation. Regarding the human resources, it was very, I would say, standard approaches, Kurzarbeit approach, home office. This was the staff who is allowed to work from their home places. So this was very, very common. And regarding the customer services, we were completely rethink our bonus programs. The possibility to return ticket was something what was very quick done. Let's say within 2 weeks, we were able to react on all the requests, and we proceed all the requests and get back money to passengers who ask for this possibility. Now, I mean, to understand what has happened from the operation side, we do operate the trains on within, let's say, 3 different segments. The regional ones, we have 14 regions who are responsible for PSOs, who cover these trains by the public money. We have the long distance covered by the Czech Ministry of Transport. In the long distance, we also operate long distance train as an open access operator, so similarly as our competitors. What has happened? This is more interesting slide than the before one. We have seen also the difference between the spring and the autumn. So you can see that the reductions, despite this imbalance COVID-19 development, was much more stronger during the spring in comparison with the autumn situation. So we can see that in the regional transport, let's say the 13% of daily services of let's say in train kilometers were cancelled. Now we are only, let's say, at about 5%. The same ratio, let's say 40-60 very roughly was during the spring. Now we are only in the ratio 20% of the trains had been cancelled, and 80% of them are still in operation. And what is more or less the same, that our open access services still keep the same share, more than 60%, because we simply are not able to earn enough money to cover these services, especially when there are some parallel trains running together with our express train. So therefore, we decided only to keep this basic requirement. We agreed with the ministry to have, let's say, this 2 hours basic interval for serving every long distance line. And what we have seen during the autumn, and these are these gray, let's say, lists or bullet points. How we did this decision-making process regarding the reduction of the capacity. So we started with the reduction of the seat capacity. So it means to cut the length of the train. Of course, we have seen that it's not enough because the people simply are not willing to travel. So we then decided to cut the commercial services as a second step. We also, as a further step, we decided to reduce the circulation. So it means sometimes our trains run, let's say, every hour, every 30 minutes. So this reduction of circulation means to cut the services up to these 2 hours as a basic offer. Sometimes we also completely rearrange, and you can see this is part of this chart on the right side, on the upper side. So we decided to cancel the train number train 3, well, let's say in the middle, and of course to rearrange the timetable slightly, that you have the option, the possibility how to change the service and continue to your destination located on this line number 3, with the change from between train.
Ian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sure.
You have to go to the end. Sorry. So maybe we can recover something afterwards. So if you can.
Okay. The very last, let's say the last slide. I would like to only demonstrate. This is very in the bottom, that you can see the different dates, and this is our negotiation process with the Ministry of Transport. How frequent and what was our reaction, our communication regarding the changes of timetable? So how to reduce the capacity, how to reduce the circulations, how to make the changes possible. So you can see that it's very, very tough, very intensive communication, and we were able in such a short period to reduce and to optimize the capacity of our services. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. We will expand a bit during the Q&A. We will have now the interviewers and then the Q&A. We have another poll, I think, Jules, and then I will ask some questions to Jan and Alex.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Paolo, and thank you, Jan, for the presentation. If we could show the next poll, please. Yes. What must the railway sector improve the most to put passengers first? So this question is actually from Network Rail. What must the railway sector improve the most out of the the 4 options there to put passengers first? Is it reliability? Is it capacity? Train speeds, or is it safety? If you can choose one of these 4, please, and we'll see what the audience will respond. So if you can respond in the next 10 seconds or so, which of the 4 must the railway sector improve? Thinking about putting passengers first. So we have a
clear majority.
Clear majority there, but if you can keep voting, please, and we'll close in the next few seconds. So put the last votes in, and yes, if you can close the poll, please. Chris, yes, great, a clear majority, as you say, Paolo. Over to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Ian and Alex, very interesting presentations. We have already a number of questions. Some of them I will now raise to you during this interview, and other we will discuss later on in the Q&A in the final session. So there are a couple of questions that are specific, but I would like to keep both of you involved. So I will try to put them together in a way that are relevant for both of you. So there is, I think, one topic which is very relevant, was touched a bit by Alex, which is how infrastructure managers and train operators interact. In particular, it was mentioned about when capacity are changing because of maintenance or any kind of operating failure. And if you are using technology and you are sharing information effectively with operator when this is happening, not just punctually, but as a general process, let's say. So this question was for you, Alex, but I'm interested also to listen Ian's opinion as operator. But let's start from Alex.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, our program does not really sit in the operations side of Network Rail, but I have some experience of that. It's not a huge amount, so I'm not best placed to answer it. But I would say that one of the things that we have been trying to do, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years, be much more in the space of building what we're calling our kind of infrastructure network model, which I think then underpins some of what Paolo was saying before earlier in his opening presentation, which was about how we can better simulate scenarios. I think I've seen the question that came in, and there's a few similar questions in that space and I think simulation in that sense is really going to help. So how do we test kind of when there's potential failures or potential disturbances, let's call it, on the network, and what impact that can have then on the train operators and service. We're definitely doing a lot of that at the moment in that space to try and improve the decision making there and utilising simulation to do that. It's interesting in COVID actually. One of the things that we did as a programme when COVID hit back in March, when we went into the first lockdown, our program wasn't directly impacted. As I said, we don't sit within the operations and the capacity planning teams within Network Rail. They were at the heart of actually changing the timetables and adjusting. One of the things we were asked to do was to look at the capabilities, particularly in track geometry alignment that we were developing, so that we could. I think it was actually one of the failures on the railhead. And it's particularly important on freight routes. And one of the things that we were asked to do was utilise the data and intelligence we were developing even in kind of early prototype phases in analytics to see whether we could generate insight for the different routes and regions and the maintenance teams to make sure they can really keep open freight routes. So freight was so important, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, moving goods around the country when we went.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do a lot in that space to try and help them. So those are some of the ways in which we've been involved in that. But I don't know if it directly answered the question, but
it's an example, yes. When you answer from a passenger operator perspective, so how you interact with the infrastructure management side about those topics, and there is another side of the market, which is of course the final customer, the passenger. Mariana Benolielli is asking us about how do you manage the planning of station stop suppression? Because in some cases there are professionals that needs to use must travel between points A and B, and so there are passengers that needs to travel even if you suppress the service for them. So how is the interaction with the infrastructure manager on one side, and how you do manage to provide information and maybe alternatives to passenger on the other side?
Yeah, if I may, it's a very interesting question because in the Czech Republic, the situation that the station properties are the owner of them is Správa železnic, national infrastructure manager. So we used to be the owner of all these properties, and of course the coordination in such a case is a bit challenging, because you have to talk to the ministry how to reduce the timetable. Then you have to talk to your infrastructure manager how to for example reduce the works on tracks to really make the operation smoother with any interruptions, and of course how to manage the passenger flows at the stations. Well, I would say that so far there's no sophisticated, has been developed any sophisticated solution. Why? Because during the spring we had this national quarantine, so it was generally not allowed to travel, only in very special cases. If you go to work, but let's say all the clerics, all the officials, they were at home. Simply, there were only manual workers who went to work, and they, of course, many. The individual car transport is something. What was the alternative? So we have seen some change, some shift from public transport to this individual car transportation. This is one aspect. What I have seen, for example, in Croatia, in Hungary, I suppose that the trains, there was like one way enter, and if you want to get out from the train, so you should it was allowed to use another door only. So it was a one way street, let's say, system or way of model to use how to organize the passengers not at the stations but on board of the trains, not to allow to meet the different people entering and leaving the train at the same time. So this was quite clever solution. But actually, this was not used, or hasn't been used in our case.
Okay, and to Alex, we are discussing about station. There is one question about for Mr. Schaltheim about management of pedestrian flows, and whether you are investing in digital solution, creating intelligent stations in these fields, or there are investment gaps. It's true that station needs higher attention in some cases than trains, because there is a typical situation that crowding can happen.
Yeah, I mean, even prior to COVID, our capacity, our network is some critical locations is already at capacity. So investment in kind of ped flow tools and systems to look at that. I think our operations, our commercial property team do a lot of that, and our ergonomics and human factors team invest quite heavily in that space already, and have been doing for many years. I mean, I used to work in the ergonomics team back sort of 10 to 15 years ago, and I know there was a team of 2 or 3 people that were focusing with the commercial property team and with the routes and regions on that. So we've always, I think, invested in that. And in the UK, and the Network Rail has upgraded a lot of its main hub stations over the years, and passenger flow has been an important part of that. We've had major transformations of the big stations. Most of you will probably be familiar with sort of St Pancras and King's Cross. There's one going on at the moment in Euston. Birmingham New Street had major redevelopment, in Glasgow as well. So there's been a lot of investment in that space, and I know that we use the latest tools to support them. I haven't got the details on that. I don't sit within those teams, but I am aware that takes place. So yeah, it is important. Okay.
So the final question, then we will take the other ones for the next section. There was really an interesting, let's say, feedback from the first poll, for the second poll, about how much the heritage of legacy system are impacting on digitalization program. And there is a specific question: when you have a mix of new system and legacy system, how do you manage the data quality coming from legacy systems? So are you able to, let's say, make some data analysis and cleansing, or you have to recreate a database from scratch? So Alex first.
The simple answer is it's really difficult. But if I elaborate on that, we had, I think at the last count, I can't recall, but I think there was something a couple of years ago. I know there was a few stats flying around that just in the kind of asset management planning performance space alone, there was something like 270, 280 legacy systems. Some ranging from some of the more modern technology solutions right down to lots of people using spreadsheets with macros and access databases and bespoke systems that people have built, and that makes life really difficult. We actually, in the last control period, 2014 to 2019, got replaced our main track infrastructure system, which was called Jogis, and that has now turned into a system called Innomar Infrastructure Network Model. That was a big replacement system, and that's paved the way now for a lot of the transformation, hopefully, that we're going to be doing over the next 5 years. It is really difficult. We have lots of different, particularly within our kind of overall transformation that's been happening in Network Rail, I'd say over the last 10 years or so, which has been to move towards a more devolved structure. So in Network Rail had a large central teams at one point, and it's now trying to devolve into regional based teams as far as possible, with much smaller centralized teams providing that kind of centers of excellence and best practice. And that's kind of akin to our kind of putting passengers first transformation program now that's taking place. So we're trying to get to the heart of the passenger by devolving. Of course, when you devolve, you allow people then to go off and create their own systems, and that's why we're working really really hard, as part of our transformation to stop that. But we have, in terms of every project that we run, there's we've got 47 large projects within our transformation program, and each one of those, you know, splits down into, you know, 10 or so solution increments over the course of the 5-year period, and each one of those increments goes through a project delivery cycle, and in every one of those delivery cycles, we have a dedicated part of that is down to data quality. So we do a data quality assessment, we look at what's needed to be improved. We are aware that some of the technologies and capabilities that we're trying to build, and actually the algorithms and the data science that we want to develop relies on good data in the first place. But if we haven't got that, we're then putting a program of data cleansing and data improvement in place, and we're asking the routes and regions to go and do that for us. And if we can help them with that centrally, we will, and using the intelligence that we can provide. And if we have got techniques or systems to do that, we will do, but otherwise we're asking them to do that for us, and we're trying to provide them with the support to do that. So it's very difficult, but we try our best to do that.
Very, very interesting. Jan, I will ask you about this later on, because now we have to move on. So Jules, again, we have I think we have a poll, and then I will introduce the next speaker.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Paolo, and thank you to Jan and Alex for the discussion. Can we show the next poll, please? Yes. Which of the following opportunities opened to railways by the lockdown is most valuable in preparation for the post-COVID world? So if you can choose one of the 4 options there, please. Rethinking service plans and timetables to meet expected demand, reducing the number of services at peak hours to reduce delays, or is it carrying out additional maintenance to improve the reliability of the infrastructure, or is it testing and introducing new technologies? If you can think about what can we be doing right now to use this opportunity right now available to railways to prepare for the next phase post-COVID world. If you can choose from one of these 4 options, please. And it's the question is a little bit long, so we'll give it maybe 10-15 more seconds. Maybe Paolo, you can
I will start meanwhile to introduce Giorgio Medeossi, who is technical director of Trenolab. He studied railway engineering. He got a PhD on that, and also was awarded in 2011 a Young Researcher of the Year by the International Association of Railway Operation Research. Then he was one of the founder of Trenolab, that is delivering advanced railway simulation tools, and he has now more than 15 years of experience and 100 publications on this area. So Giorgio, you can show up, and meanwhile we see that we reach almost 40 answers, and there are 2 clear.
If you can, if you haven't voted yet, if you can vote in the next 2 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. So yes, if you can close the poll now, please, and then you can see the results in the closed section. Yes, so we have two kind of popular votes.
Answer almost the same number of votes for rethinking service plans and timetables to meet expected demand, and also testing and introducing new technologies. I was also uncertain about which one of the 2 to answer, and I'm not surprised about the outcome. So I think is very relevant, both elements. For the testing and introducing new technology, I think it would be interesting to hear from Giorgio whether he has those experience as provider of solution, this dynamic in the market. So Giorgio.
Yes, Giorgio, if you can turn on your camera and mic. If it's not working, if you can, yes.
It's coming.
Perfect. Yes, I can see you now. Your screen is frozen. So maybe if you could refresh your browser, I think is quickest remedy. Hopefully it will work. So
shall we eventually do the other poll, or?
No, I think he'll come back. I think he's there. He's just checking his
Okay.
browser. Yes.
He's arrived.
Hello.
Hi, Giorgio. I can hear you now.
Hello. Sorry for, let's say, technology. Let's say, just speaking about technology for
I know very well.
It's the beauty of live events, and anything can happen, and and it makes it even more interesting, I think. But there you go. So we can prove that it's live.
Yeah. If you could start my slides, then so that we avoid one more technology, let's say, risk.
Right. Okay. So if we can show Giorgio's slides, please.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Paolo, for introducing me. And okay, so a couple of words regarding who we are. Who is Trenolab? So we are a bit more than let's say virtual, let's say carpenters that create virtual models of railways. And these models that we create are based on a mix of, let's say, analysis of data, of simulations, and obviously, as for all, let's say, carpenters that would use, let's say, the tools we see in this picture, based on the experience gained in a few years. Actually, this experience started now many years ago from, let's say, our studies in the academia and then a research period, PhD, and so on. And what we like to continue doing is being present also in this world. So if you, let's say, buy, for example, one of these books, or if you are present in the conferences on this subject, then you will most probably find us there. We support a number of key players in railway operations, and these go from Network Rail in the UK to Metrolink in Los Angeles, California, via Norway, France, and so on. You can see here a few examples. Why Trenolab? Why our activity? What railways do have today is they have lots of data available. Sometimes they use them, sometimes they in effect analyze them. It is more difficult to make a real value out of them, especially because this requires also being able to take advantage of them to replan more quickly the new service, and so to adapt services to, let's say, changing conditions or to the actual performances of the system. Replanning quickly means introducing a risk of planning badly or wrongly, and this needs then tools to verify that the plan that is proposed is good enough to enter into service. This is another, let's say, key point. The assets are very expensive. Changing costs a lot of money. Changing in the bad way is something that railways have to avoid absolutely. To support these, let's say, three key actions, Trenolab thinks that the key in our approach is giving to railways tools that allow analyzing data in an easy and intuitive way. Maybe we don't do the most sophisticated analysis, but something that real planners can do themselves, is paving the way towards the automatic, or at least computer-supported design of timetables to make this more quick. At the same time is developing tools that allow fast network-wide simulations to verify that the quality of new plans and test their sensitivity towards the expectable perturbations, variations, and so on. To support this, we have developed, let's say, we've put our three tools, Trenanalysis, Trenoplus, and Trenissimo, in a sort of closed loop in which they are perfectly integrated with each other. Now, how are these becoming a useful support in COVID times? Actually, let's say not that much when you just reduce heavily service. This is mostly still a manual process. But railways are already luckily, let's say, looking forward, to a post-COVID world. in which let's say starting at best will mean gaining again passengers, will mean gaining market share, will mean remaining or becoming more competitive. So in a first example, we are in London, Waterloo, London's busiest terminal in pre-COVID times. What are Network Rail doing here? They are trying to find, as this station is oversaturated from all points of view, the idea is, and let's say a big investment would be extremely complex to implement. Network Rail are trying selected improvements to the interlocking system and to the operations in the station that would lead to a measurable improvement in the quality of operations, i.e. a reduction in delays. Thanks to the very detailed model in Trenissimo, it was possible to test the impact of removing a very detailed feature of the interlocking system, which is the approach control, which forces trains to basically approach the home signals of the station at a very limited speed. And so what we did was calibrating a model of the current station, calibrate the behavior of drivers and so on to obtain a good model, and then test the impact of delays of removing this feature. Removing the feature costs, let's say, a few £100,000 and brings a reduction of delays that could be evaluated in £1.2 million per year, which means that, yes, okay, it's a small investment, but yes, this investment is repaid already in the first year of implementation. An example of, say, how, let's say, this time can be used to be prepared for a better start after COVID. At the same time, on the same network, another key point of analysis is understanding by how far current delays are caused by, or at least increased by, human factors. So one of the goals of this investigation was to understand how driving assistance systems or assisted braking would be beneficial to current operations. To do this, we needed to test a mesh of, let's say, 32 scenarios resulting from the combination, from all possible combinations of two scenarios of input delays, driving policies decided by the train operating company, driving assistance system, assisted braking, and length of trains. Each scenario had about 1,500 trains, and it was tested for 250 virtual days. So this really needed a very fast simulation to test. What we obtained was not, as frequently in simulation, a yes or no result, but it was really a sort of multidimensional mesh of the sense, showing the sensitivity of delays towards the combination of these parameters, and so giving at the end an area within which a DAS was more, or would be more or less beneficial in terms of delays. In a third example, SNCF is now doing something a bit more conventional. On the network that has an end in Paris, terminates in Paris-Gare de l'Est, they are preparing for major infrastructure works. The station will be for a couple of years heavily restricted in its operations due to the unavailability of 5 platforms caused by the construction of the CDG Express, the new fast connection to the airport. Here, the idea was to use the simulation as a tester of the ideas given by all stakeholders, I would say, around the table, so by SNCF Réseau, maybe by Transilien and so on, so by the let's say, transport authorities and so on, so that it could be, their results are a way of agreeing on which would be a configuration that is satisfying for for all players. So each can have an idea, and all these ideas are tested, and then results are discussed among all stakeholders at the same table. The result is a shared, let's say, path for the improvement of operations on the line in the short and mid-term, and a set of timetables to be deployed during the various work phases. Fourth and final example, COVID, and let's say, is also a moment to rethink somehow out of the box long-term strategies for timetable and infrastructure development. And we are working with SBB, so with the Swiss Railways, to test the future services and thus related investments on two key transalpine axes, which are the Gotthard and Simplon. Here, very interestingly, compared to the past, the focus will be, again, let's say, running more and faster passenger services instead of further increasing capacity for freight, which is a complete change. The complexity of running faster international passenger services is that this corridor has at its two terminals, the Zurich area and Milan area, which are respectively, let's say, the core points of the Swiss and the Italian network. And obviously, creating a plan with as fast as possible trains between the two cities means that basically the whole of the Swiss and the whole of the Italian network need to be coordinated to allow for this service. This is not something you do in one day, and where you find in let's say, one evening of work, you find the best solution. So here, the key was to really be able to develop a broad set of possible timetable alternatives, a broad set of somehow sensible investments, to test all of them, and then to rank them to decide which would be the most suitable. This process is still in core and still happening. Here we see, let's say, how the simulation tool supports this with a very short simulation time that allows running more and more tests. Now, you might ask, why did we need to develop from scratch a tool for simulation, which is something quite expensive, and there are other alternatives that have been on the market for many years. So why taking this risk? We did this for three reasons. One is we wanted a tool that was more accurate, and we have obtained it by modeling more accurately the human factors. So basically, how drivers drive, how do our delays inserted in the model, then inserting all detailed features of signaling and interlocking systems, so making the interlocking machine, let's say, more realistic. And third is making the traffic management process driven by virtual dispatchers, so by agents that mimic the real process of dispatching trains. Second point was making a tool that was remarkably faster, which basically allows obtaining more results in a shorter time, and so testing more alternatives. Through a combination of let's say, use of the most modern IT technology, separation of computations between CPUs and GPUs, cloud computing, spreading the load of computation across multiple machines, and so on, we obtain results in a tiny fraction of time compared to other commercial tools, almost 100 of time. Third is we wanted to make the process as smooth as possible. We needed to integrate the analysis, replanning, and simulation in one single tool, which, besides reducing the time taken to obtain the result, also reduces the probability of errors by planners. The tool can be used, as you can see here, at most stages of planning. But obviously, as I said, we come from the academia, we want to, let's say, continue pushing for further development of the state-of-the-art technologies. And so today, in concluding my presentation, I would ask your support in, let's say, looking forward to which are the remaining shortcomings of these types of models. Would it be, let's say, adding the moving block or virtual coupling, so simulating the most recent interlocking technologies? Would it be inserting passengers in the simulation, so considering their flow, their actual travel time, and so on? Would it be incorporating weather conditions so that we can estimate how, for example, leaf fall influences operations? Would it be using simulation to support management of disruptions? Would it be replanning timetables dynamically or simulating a dynamic replanning of timetables and testing their impact on passenger travel times? Would it be incorporating regulatory constraints, or would it finally be being able to generate a timetable automatically or semi-automatically?
So that brings us to the poll. So it's exactly the same question that Giorgio has just asked us. This is our last poll. So which of the following would be most needed for the next generation of decision-making tools? So you can choose all of the answers that you think would apply. But don't choose all of them, but choose whatever you feel would be needed. So it's multiple choice question. Giorgio, I don't know if you want to read out the answers again and describe them.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one would be, let's say, testing the impact of, let's say, future signaling technologies. Moving block is, let's say, coming. Virtual coupling is something like more futuristic. Second would be considering passengers. Considering passengers instead of just trains in the simulation means that it is possible to dynamically assign passenger to services, and so obtain as an outcome of the simulation the true travel time of each passenger in realistic conditions. The third is weather conditions. We know that railways don't perform constantly over the year. So considering explicitly weather conditions would allow, for example, making a timetable fit for autumn and a timetable with faster running times for spring or for summer. Disruption management would mean implementing sets of algorithms or, let's say, rule-based solutions that allow the tool to suggest dispatchers possible solutions for, let's say, during disruptions. The dynamic replanning of timetables is a concept at the present, or it is the idea that when passengers have all travel with an app, they might, let's say, timetables might be adapted to changing demand even during the day. The second last point is railways are strongly influenced by regulatory constraints, service contracts, performance regimes, and so on. By incorporating them in the simulation or in replanning, it would be possible to more easily not forget to have them in the plan, and so reduce further the replanning time. And the last point is something that researchers have been, let's say, developing for years, and it is, will it finally be possible to generate automatically a timetable based on, for example, on the expected demand, the characteristics of the network, target performances, and so on.
Thank you, Giorgio. And it's like I said, it's a multiple choice question. So do select all of the options that you feel will be useful in the next generation of decision-making tools. So if you could choose, make your selection in the next 10 seconds or so, and then we'll close this final call before we move on to the panel discussion. So yes, if you can make your final choices. and we'll be closing in the next 2 seconds. So yes, if we can close the poll, please. Right, now the response is in the closed section. So Paolo, over to you, and if the all speakers can now join on stage as well, please, and I'll hand over to Paolo.
Yeah, interesting, let's say, distribution of the answers. There is not a clear, let's say, majority. Of course, dynamic replanning slightly got the highest number of answers, positive answers, but it's quite distributed. We have almost at the same level users passenger flow in simulation and automatic or semi-automatic generation of timetables, and then slightly lower disruption management, regulatory constraints, and moving block and network coupling, and even close also is weather conditions. So can you, Giorgio, comment on that based on your market observatory and the request you get from operators? Are you in line with this distribution, or you think that our audience is more, let's say, is a more dispersed view than what you get as a request from the market?
I think this resembles quite well what we saw in the market. At the same time, also, let's say, in particular, let's say the slightly preferred alternative, which is the dynamic replanning, is also, let's say, the most complex concept, because that would really trigger a complete change in how operations are carried out, while, let's say, the others are just improvements to a tool. Going towards a dynamic replanning of service makes only sense if, let's say, all the railways would work differently and would be adapted, prepared to it.
Thank you.
Most interesting, most challenging. Thank you.
Exactly. Alex, so from your point of view, which one of those are the most relevant ones?
Probably not in the past, but certainly currently the one from our program that we're looking at, particularly on the infrastructure at the moment, is the lowest one. Actually, is the weather conditions in simulations. So in our decision support capabilities, particularly for our civils discipline, so geotechnic, where we have, we've had a recent issue, drainage and earth failure in Scotland, which you may have seen on the news, caused the derailment, and unfortunately we had some fatalities there. So weather's something we're actually bringing in additional weather data onto our Azure platform at the moment. That's one of the early forerunner projects at the moment. So that's really important to looking at the maintenance side. But all the other ones I can see from past experience that I've had looking at infrastructure network model and working with capacity planning, I can see the relevance of all of them, really.
Okay, and Ian, from a passenger train operator point of view, which one are the most relevant?
I mean, I would definitely follow the disruption management D, because this is something, well, we know that our infrastructure manager makes some decision based on data, but let's say the operation itself is mostly still based on, let's say, experience. So this, I mean, to offer you which option make for the whole operation the minimum effect would be something what would definitely welcomed. And of course, I can imagine this automatic and semi-automatic generation of timetables that might be quite clever solution. Yeah,
you're right. This was one of the introductory points that railway operators are and infrastructure managers as well are increasingly, let's say, developing or buying such kind of tools. But then when we move to the operation side, even if they have this capability, so they know that exist, there is a lot to do before having them implemented to really manage the day-to-day operation. And this is a mix of tradition, skills, and resilience in this case, and resistance we mentioned in one of the earliest polls. I think we can move on. We have other points coming from the audience in the Q&A, and those are some points I would like to share with you. So there is one very general point, which is we discussed a bit in the previous interview about the data. And there is a very general but good question about how you judge which data are good or bad, especially when you are doing this, let's say, cleansing of all data to be reviewed, to be. So there is a specific way to do it, or it just bringing back the experience of the staff on board to make this judgment. I remember doing a project of this kind in Italy, and we, similar to Alex described, we use the knowledge of people in the different regions, because there was not centrally, let's say, built knowledge to really check quality of data about infrastructure asset, for instance. And we were gathering new data from drones or other things, but then of course at the end of the day we should be sure that they are in line with the actual situation, at least make some drill downs to do that. So Giorgio, first do you have any is a point you is coming in when you are developing a new tools? You mentioned that the importance of big data at the beginning.
Yeah. We often receive data that are not accurate enough to be used in practice, or that can be used only to a limited extent. A simple example would be the classic, let's say, train movement data that we receive. For example, Network Rail gives out lots of, let's say, normally high quality data, but for certain purposes, like the modeling of dwell times at stations, even a few seconds of error can be remarkable, because let's say a dwell time can be 30 seconds. If it is 35 or 38, or if it is 24 and so on, then the proportional error is quite big. In many cases, these data show, let's say, inconsistent values, and there are techniques to identify classic errors, but the process is, let's say, takes time and not always leads to satisfying or allows filtering out the error and getting a data set that can be used. What to do in that case, because we need to get a solution, of course, we tend to then pick data from a similar other station and to use that instead.
Okay. Any point of view from the other speakers on that?
I mean, generally, if I may,
Jan.
From our side, I mentioned in my presentation, or during my presentation, that we operate in open system. It means that our trains are simply, you don't need to buy the receipt reservation. And what we really see, we have, regarding the data in the field of revenues, it's quite easily to manage, to observe how many tickets we have sold, etc., etc. But the real issue is how many people are really on board of the train, because if you have a monthly ticket, if you have a yearly ticket, so you simply, you are not checked, and if the conductor not comes, so then you are not in the system. And this is really critical aspect of this COVID-19 situation, of this pandemic, how to make all the measures and how to make these data, where to get them, to use these counting frames at the doors, or should we use the cameras? And this is the big discussion right now, how the train operator who has an open system, who must operate in this framework, how to get the precise data on the people on board.
Yeah, exactly. We discussed this on a previous webinar, was the major challenge we have now. And there are a number of technologies, but working with operators, reliability of the information is not always 100%. So there are other topics I would like to share with you, because there are new questions coming as well. So a number of technology challenges has been raised by the audience. I will mention all of them, and then I will ask you to react. Which one are in your view closer to solution? For Giorgio, in terms of technical solution, and for Ian and Alex, how much you are doing, really working with digital tools to work on that. One is ensure physical distancing of staff in particular, so ensure that they get an alert, for instance, if they are too close to someone from the public or from other colleagues. Second topic is decarbonization and energy management. So if you are considering in planning the train running, the best solution in terms of energy consumption, and if it's done, let's say, automatically, I would say, whether are you using augmented reality or mixed reality, in completing, let's say, the simulation of the of real condition. This is also very useful for training staff, for showing to them what will happen under certain condition. And finally, I think another question was coming before. Are you using and analyzing data about public perception? So are you comparing performances as emerging from the system, like in terms of punctuality, for instance, with customer satisfaction? So we and perceived punctuality, because sometimes there are interesting information when you compare these two information, and you see that you cannot only rely on the data coming from IoT on the equipment. So these are 4 areas: physical distancing, in particular of staff, decarbonization, augmented reality, and public perception information. Giorgio first.
Yeah, for what we work with, let's say the first point is a bit small, that
for operators.
Yeah, so the first point is a bit less relevant in our activity, because let's say we deal mostly with, let's say, planning and so on. So I wouldn't know, let's say, the right answer. Regarding the other points, let's say, in particular, starting with the last one, let's say, combining the results of train movement data and for example, polls on passengers would be very interesting. In effect, the point of including passengers in the simulation would partially solve that, because you can have 98% punctuality, but the only trains running systematically late are the 4 most used trains in the peak hour, and so most passengers would say, "Yeah, no, I'm traveling late." So including passengers in the simulation might be a way for obtaining this probably in a cheaper way. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, let's say, obviously, matching data would be greatly beneficial.
Thanks.
And yeah, that's for one point. So, yeah. Okay.
Alex, any view, for instance, are you in your large digitalization program, are you using, I'm interested about energy management, which is a key topic. So we are designing timetable considering that, and also whether you are experimenting augmented or mixed reality.
So we've got a large team looking at sort of environment and sustainability at the moment. They're in our technical authority. In fact, they're now moved into our network service. But we're doing a lot of work with them at the moment. So particularly our kind of work on geotechnic, and we're working closely with the team that are looking at biodiversity. You talked about energy management. That's an interesting one. We're some of our decision support capabilities on the infrastructure that we're developing is particularly focused on electrification. So we're going to be electrifying more lines within the UK. There's some large electrification programs up running at the moment. So, once we put that electrification in, the decision support capability to allow our staff to manage and maintain electrified railways is really, really important. I think the augmented reality, I'm not close enough to that. I have seen some of it in the past. We were working with some of our supply chain partners to look at that, and particularly around, I know we've done some stuff looking at training maintenance stuff, has been something that we've looked at, whether rather than actually people being on track, can we use augmented reality to support training? So I know there's a little bit of that going on, but I'm not close to that.
Ian, any views on those topics we're just discussing?
Yeah, just physical distancing. Well, we don't use definitely any digital solution. I know that only in the cases at the stations when at the ticket office. So we simply closed, let's say, every second window to keep this distancing. I mean, for our staff, because the demand was from the passenger side was lower. So it was much easier to simply say, yeah, the first and the second. Well, the first is open, second is closed, and the let's say third window is once again open. This was this simply a very simple approach. Energy consumption is getting very how to say it. It's a very interesting topic for us right now because we have so many rail cars on regional lines. Let's say it's 60% of our network, and these rail cars are let's say 30 years old, and definitely all these rail cars are diesel. Of course, we have modernized some of them. We still are modernizing some of them, but it's clear that we have to do a new step into the future. Otherwise, all these regionalized might die. So the question then is the efficiency, the energy and its efficiency. So whether to use the battery trains, whether what Alex mentioned, whether to continue the electrification, and then of course on which lines does it make a sense and where not? Because of course on regional lines sometimes the performance is not really very high. So this is quite tricky issue how to manage the whole process. Augmented reality is something, we're still looking. We will once see this tool in our decision making process. And punctuality and passenger satisfaction, of course, this is something what is critical aspect. We always, when doing some customer surveys, we are asking what is the importance of the punctuality and the delays, because our infrastructure manager is still having a lot of work, and it will be the same for next 15 years, because we have modernized the infrastructure, let's say from the very old socialist, it's slow, not really reliable infrastructure, let's say during 90s. But of course, after let's say 15, 20 years, we have to once again remodernize this infrastructure. So it means it's a continuous process. And Alex could definitely confirm this. So we have to find a solution how to measure punctuality, how our passengers are reflecting on these aspects of our business. Because many times it's not us as a railway operator who caused the delays, but it's because of the delay, because of the works on the tracks.
Yeah, that's true in several countries at least. So now I will bundle a couple of questions that relates on the way you work to develop new digital solution or to implement it at the operator level. So there was one question about I think for Alex, for you, about how the use of Agile is going, and are you implementing Agile approach on more traditional projects? And the other question is about how big staff. This is for Giorgio, but I think is relevant for operator as well. How big the staff you have for preparing simulation? That for the operator side would be, if you have a simulating tool, how big is the staff that is preparing and running the simulator? So in general, how you do you organizing how it is shaping your organization, the staffing involved in actually implementing such solutions. So first Giorgio, and then Alex and Ian.
Okay, currently internally there is a staff of 8 people implementing the models, 7 people developing simulation, let's say developing the tools themselves. In our view, let's say we start a process in which we deliver, let's say, ready to use models and then maybe all the results. But our goal is to train the staff at railways so that they gradually become absolutely or almost completely independent from us. How many people they would need? Let's say a simulation, large-scale simulation depends on whether the model already exists or not. If the model already exists, one person working full-time can simulate a network of up to 1,000 kilometers, I would say, in 1 month. From when he, let's say, receives the timetable inputs to when he delivers all the final results. Mm-hmm. But to give, let's say, a range.
Okay, Alex.
So we use a mix of agile and waterfall. There will still approaches. There will still be, although you can adopt sort of agile principles within a more traditional waterfall kind of delivery approach. There's still projects and programs that lend itself to the more traditional waterfall approach. The thing with agile is that, you know, and one of the things that we're learning now is that we're probably at the forefront of driving agile delivery in the organization. There are a couple of other areas in the business that are testing the waters in it as well. But the one thing the two or three things that you really need is, particularly it's difficult because in highly regulated organization industries, there's a lot of sort of enablers that need to be in place. So you've got to have everybody pulling in the right direction. You've got to have all of your processes, your documentation, the other functions that you're working with that are assuring deliverable. Got to have them also take them on the journey of delivering projects in an agile way. So that's really difficult. It's not you can't flip it overnight and turn from the more traditional delivery approaches to go, we're going to be agile. That's just not the way it's working. So for us, and we're learning internally ourselves how to deliver in an agile way. There's other things in there. You know, you've got to have the right skill. You've got to have, in our case in technology, have we got the right product owners? You know, I said we've got 47 projects, multiple solution increments. Have we got the right product owners that can really own and drive those products forward? You know, that are able to touch base with subject matter experts in the organisation. It's really difficult to find those people that have a kind of mix of skill, have kind of railway experience, data and technology experience, and kind of that drive, ambition, and innovation. And imagination to take those products forward. That's really difficult. You can't flip it overnight, but certainly it very much a kind of, I know it sounds like a cliche, but sort of taking the organisation and ourselves on a journey, and it will take some time, but we're trying to move more and more towards delivering under those agile principles and lean management.
Of course. And Diane?
Yeah, actually, I would like to confirm what Alex had just said. I mean, I would say the railway sector has been considered, you know, it's for railwaymen. But now we can see we need so many clarifications, so many knowledge from different perspectives. And this is something where we are right now, we're starting the whole process, how to get the new process, new methods of driving the business, and how to get IT, you know, the people from the operation, they know how to operate, let's say the physically, and based on their experience, not really using experience as a main tool, not the data, the real-time data. And this is something we definitely have to do, this increase the mixture of qualifications, and then we could start really to use the new railway, the operation of the new railways.
Yeah, this introduces us well on the last topic I would like to discuss. There are a couple of questions, even in the chat. There is one remark about how to use different sources of data to count the passenger on board, but I will leave this for another webinar because it's a very, very large topic. And I will just consider one aspect of it, that once you have this data in real time, Igor Perkon is asking whether we can think to renegotiate passenger timetables or even daily or weekly based on actual transport flow. So transforming railways from a fixed timetable service on demand transport. And I think this will impact also on the simulation tools, no? Because it will not use anymore to say analyze, assess a future possible situation, but you need to use a daily basis to combine with artificial intelligence on data to revise the timetable for the next day, for instance. Of course, you still have to understand how to dynamically replan the shift of the rolling stock on the drivers. So it's that you cannot just design a dynamic timetable and then implement it easily. But I think is a promising areas of discussion. So I start again with Giorgio. Do you think this coming, so your tools using on a day-to-day basis and not too much to, let's say, test a new timetable or for the next year?
I think that this is something that will be coming in the coming, let's say, year or so, a couple of years, something like that. So we'll start seeing solutions that allow for that. Computationally is now possible. So of course, not with one single computer that does the whole German network, but for parts of it, I think that it is something that will be coming soon.
Alex.
Yeah, it's another interesting one because we've got another sort of broader digital transformation program within Network Rail, Digital Railway, and that focuses particularly on kind of European Rail Traffic Management System implementation, but also traffic management. And some of the things that we talked about a number of years ago, actually, I remember it's definitely that vision of looking way ahead and what it can be. Will the office, very relevant now, actually, really, when thinking about it, will the office place change? Will people be wanting to work on train? All of that sort of dynamic timetable changes on the go, all of that sort of type of stuff. So that's very much the vision. I think, the focus for us at the moment is implementing the initial traffic management systems and getting them onto the network. When people are used to working with traffic management systems and doing the basics right, then we start thinking of some of those more futuristic ideals, which I'm sure will come ahead. And I think the technologies are there. It's just the ability to implement those quickly. And I think that you should consider that.
That means bridging the gap between timetabling and traffic management. Also in terms of people in charge of it. Ian, on your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Igor is right that it was very dynamic, very quick. But there is one very important aspect. We were only talking about the cuts. So to reduce the capacity, it means to save the public money. Somehow also not only our money, but also the public money. And this is therefore it was quite easy to decide. And of course, we had already this experience from the springtime. So what I know as a railway operator, we as a long distance department, we were able to say, yes, we would like to cut this train, that particular train and that train. But let's say for the operation, and that might be a good, let's say, challenge for the utilization for the data, usage of the data, that our operation department always need at least 1 week for setting all the circulations for the new conditions. So this is something what really takes the time, and it definitely needs or could bring better performance in the future. To really have a floating, let's say, timetable, that would be, I like this idea, but of course, in the case that you are operating a PSO covered services, then you always have to think about money. So where is the upper and the, let's say, lower barrier, or where is the segment? Because you cannot simply run or increase the capacity, I don't know, for additional 20%, because you don't have rolling stock and even the money.
Unless there is a reward, if you are better serving the passenger with this dynamic, then the compensation of the public service contract could be increased, for instance. Now, this is a potential. We have, I think, one of the things we have to reform is the way public service contracts are shaped so far. So thanks to all the speakers, we are going to the end. We use all the time available, so I have just 1 minute for my conclusion. I think it was very interesting topic. I would like to thank Trenolab for proposing it, because it was a lot of questions and I think interesting remarks from both the other speakers. What we see now, there is a dynamic. One of the last questions we got is that COVID-19 is certainly creating some dynamic that we haven't seen before in the use of new technology. The need of this dynamic in replanning the service is one of the key elements. Social distance is the other one. The changing behavior of customers is probably the most important one. We are facing this challenge now. They were experimenting technology in many cases. Now they know that they have to use it extensively, not just on, let's say, making some pilot, but on a day-to-day basis. They have to upskill their people to do that. They have to make this understandable for external stakeholders, train operating companies, for the infrastructure manager, the public, the general public, but also the authorities that are the contractors of the public service contract for the passenger operator. So there is a dissemination, some evangelism to be done about the potential of new technology in order to make them not just, let's say, a way to see that a better performance can be possible, but actually to implement such better performance. There are some points that I when raising the question that will be useful for Jules for organizing future webinars. So Jules, it's up to you now to close our webinar of today. And thank to your organization for such interesting interchange you have organized for today.
Thank you very much, Paolo, and thank you to all the speakers for today's session. It was very interactive session with a lot of questions coming from the audience as well. So thank you to the audience too. There are just a couple of webinars left this year, and I just want to remind the audience this has been announced already. There's one, I think, next week on cybersecurity. So this is another important topic for as railways are digitalizing various aspects of their operations. How do we ensure that security of various digitalized services and operations are ensured? So that's the session next week on the 2nd of December. To finish off the year with, we've been working with Swiss Railways SBB since September. We have done 3 webinars on the theme of the power of digital to inspire rail passenger confidence. So we've talked about a healthy environment for the passengers. We've talked about passenger flow. We talked about how to digitally nudge passengers to behave in certain ways. So the last session, part 4, will be about smarter ticketing to bring rail passengers back safely. So this will be on the 16th of December. So do join us for these 2 webinars. And we have also announced that the 10th International Railway Summit will be online end of February. So this is usually a physical event. We've done 9 events so far, but this will be online next February. We'll be talking about reimagining rail innovation to get society back on sustainable track. So getting back on track, but the track being sustainable. So we have a very senior speakers coming to this event, and more details will be announced in the next coming weeks. So do join us for this event. So thank you once again to Trenolab for today's session. Thank you to speakers Giorgio Medeusi, Alex Schock, Jan Illig, and thank you to Paolo Guglielminetti for skillfully navigating this discussion today. And thank you to the audience, and I hope you'll join us again next week for our next webinar. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.